I'm the Animist, and you are listening to the Video and Company podcast. Today we have Alexander Rivera on the show. He is a DP out of Raleigh that has been doing a lot more narrative work lately. His commercial and music video stuff is stellar. On the show today, we talk about the importance of pre-production, art department, lighting, mostly about planning the shoot and how planning can make your projects exceed your expectations. So here's Alex.
We're going to start for real now.
Yeah. And don't worry, there's like no intro or whatever. Like no staged intro.
There's no music that's going to come on?
Not right now. I'll edit that in later. Super briefly, if you want to just like say who you are and like what you do.
Yeah. So I'm Alexander Rivera. I'm a DP cam op, kind of branching into all directions. I originally started doing primarily doc work, and then transitioned more into doing commercial work, and then now kind of tumbling my career into narrative a little bit. But yeah, I'm kind of a bit of a jack of all trades, but definitely primarily a DP, want a DP solely. But I also do a good amount of G&E work just to kind of keep learning more about lighting, which is something that personally is a big interest of mine and something that I feel is really beneficial to my DP career. So do a little bit of everything.
Yeah, and I remember actually one of the first times I reached out to you, it was because you had G&E in your bio. And I was like, I need to get in on that. Like, what does this dude know? And you were pretty much saying what you just said now, how it's like a platform for you to kind of like up your game in the lighting area.
And that was something that I didn't even really know about until other mentors and DPs that I look up to kind of brought that up. As soon as I graduated college, I started kind of freelancing and working, and I started as an AC because that was kind of what I thought was a good place to be. And I was like, I'm going to be close to the DP. I'm going to be able to learn from them. And then after talking to a bunch of DPs and a bunch of first ACs, they were all kind of like, well, if you really want to be a DP, you should probably go work in G&E. And that was kind of a big turning point in my career because I'd started kind of paying more attention to lighting and kind of realizing how important that is to creating images in a way that I would say is probably the most important thing about creating images. And so I already done a little bit of gripping, and I kind of transitioned more into doing more key gripping and then occasional gaff jobs, which is what I do now. But that was a big turning point in kind of like establishing myself as more of a DP and learning more about how to control lighting and being able to be a person of authority on lighting and not letting that kind of be something that passes you by.
Yeah, and it's something that like I don't think any of us really like when we first start and we like start buying camera stuff, we're not thinking like maybe we should do the gaffer route first. It's almost like you get far enough into the camera world that you realize, oh, the camera like almost barely doesn't even matter.
Yeah, it doesn't.
Like if the light is good, anything will look fine.
Yeah. I think especially like when I started, I was doing a lot of sports work, so a lot of the variables of what you're doing lighting wise are completely gone. I mean, like the only time you're ever really going to light something is if you're doing an interview, but if you're just doing, B-roll of anything, like campus or college football stuff, or you're at a football practice, you're not lighting anything. You're just kind of like, oh, well, what's the best I can do with these shots? So you come into it that way. And then I was a big camera nerd. So I wanted to know all the specs of everything, why that worked a certain way. And once I found lighting, I was, like you said, I was like, none of this actually matters. Like it's all a lie, like if you know how to manipulate your lighting, you can make anything look however you want it to look.
Yeah. And not lately just because of everything that's going on, but like I started to realize I want to go bigger, and I got me a tungsten kit, and I think that was a good start to get into bigger stuff. But now it's like I need to know what those HMIs are all about, but
Yeah.
I'm not trained with generators or like amperage and all that stuff. And it's like, all right, there's a like serious learning curve that if I want to get past a certain point in gaffing, I need like some serious education because it's dangerous if you don't have it.
Yeah, I love having a good electric on set and a good gaffer on set, and just kind of being able to even when I'm DPing, just learn from them and kind of giving them room to play. When you can kind of say, well, this is the general thing I'm thinking. These are the sources that we have. What do you guys think? And it's always interesting to hear them kind of go into those really nerdy amperage voltage things that I don't know a lot about either. I'm still learning that kind of side of it, but yeah, it's like a whole nother kind of like arena in the same job, but something that very few people really know a lot about.
Yeah, I've been actually thinking about getting a like doing a community college class, but right now probably that's going to be hard to do unless it was
Yeah.
online, and even then,
All online. Yeah.
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 So I guess what we talked about a couple days ago is I've never been able to do a show. I've always wanted to do a show where it's like, all right, I want to tackle this because it's whatever I'm just dealing with, or I feel like it's something that people aren't talking about enough, or it's undervalued, and have a whole show kind of about that. And I don't want to limit this talk too much, but
Yeah.
um, pre-production, I feel like is something that literally can make or break a project, and um, it's just kind of like blown over in
Yeah.
most small crews. I would say like especially one-man bands, pre-pros blown over all the time. It feels like, but in smaller crews, it's not as common as it is with a huge crew. It's they take months on it. So
Right.
you work generally with like smaller crews, like 3 to 5 people on set, or is it bigger than
Yeah.
that?
It's kind of shifted. It used to be a lot of one man band, and then uh, I think I kind of fell into this thing of just talking to a lot of people and realizing that you can only be as successful as like the people that are around you, and if you're just around yourself, that is a huge limiting factor to your work.
Yep.
So I started meeting more and more people, and through that met people that didn't just do the same thing I did, and then successfully convinced these people to want to work on projects with me. So it's kind of shifted a little bit from I no longer really work alone. I kind of almost always have at least 3 to 5 people, and then it can kind of vary upwards of that, but nothing bigger than like a 10 to 15 person crew. But yeah, kind of like small to mid range.
And like, what would you say your percentage of your jobs that you have to do some kind of producer role? Like, you don't have to be the main producer, but like you
Yeah.
were doing producer line jobs, line producer type stuff.
Pretty often. I would say not always by necessity, but almost by choice, purely just because I, as a DP, tend to like to have a pretty strong vision and not just kind of show up and shoot whatever the director has in mind. I've worked with people like that where it's just kind of like, hey, this is what we're doing. I just want you to show up and kind of make what I laid down to do look as good as possible. And that I find to be not as fun as working with someone who wants to bring you in on the vision and say, hey, this is kind of the general outline, but I want you to make this look good. And we can also change a few things if there are things that you think could be better. And I think that's the win-win in every scenario. I think is giving people the power to express themselves, even if it's like, you know, gripping and gaffing, like I have different conversations with those people than probably a DP who doesn't have that background, purely just because I've been in situations where the DP basically gives you what he wants the layout to be and then gives you room to kind of be creative about how you get there. And those are always the most successful situations. But I kind of fallen into doing a little bit more producing just to be able to kind of control the vision throughout, and also make sure that it runs smoothly, because so much about being a DP is working with a schedule and having adequate time to get the shots that you want to get, purely because you want your work to stand for itself, but also because you want the director and the producer and everybody to be successful. But it's always easier to do that when you're the person producing, or at least doing some form of producing, because you can see the holes in the schedule and say, oh, well, that's not going to work. Like, that shot's not going to take 5 minutes. That's going to take an hour. Or, well, you guys budgeted in 2.5 hours for a shot that is just going to be run and gun, no lighting. That might only take 20 minutes. So it kind of helps do that. And then also another thing is making your crew happy, because you can take care of them better if you're the person doing the producing. And you can keep your AC happy because you're not making them have to do something in 5 minutes. It really takes them 30. So it kind of is like a way to mitigate further risks, I would say, and is something that I enjoy, because I'm an incredibly organized type A personality. So, I mean, making spreadsheets is not something that irks me. It's like something I enjoy doing, like that's a pleasing Friday night for me, is doing spreadsheets. So if I'm already going to be doing them for shot listing, putting in a little producing isn't going to hurt me.
Yeah, and I mean the whole shot listing thing. I don't go as like in depth as some people that I see, but from going to having it like just written out on a notepad somewhere that I'm gonna put on my clipboard, versus like actually doing a lookbook with like in depth like inserts and stuff like that. It's even if it's just like 8 images and 12 notes.
Yeah.
I always feel way more prepared than if I showed up and just was like, whatever we got, we got.
Absolutely. I think that part of that too is almost my whole motto has been like putting yourself in a position to succeed, because coming from the doc world, I had no pre-pro experience whatsoever. I had no experience working with a producer, no experience working with a director. It was a lot of just like flying by the seat of your pants. And I became infinitely frustrated with my work not looking the way I wanted to. And I had, like slim the vision down into something that I wanted to achieve. And then I would do all the work, show up, shoot, whatever. And then it never looked the way I wanted to. And I was like, well, that's frustrating. I don't really know, I can always get better, get more talented, spend more money on gear, but I feel like there's something else here. And I kind of, watching a lot of, videos and learning from other people, I basically just got a little bit more demanding about how things were done. And instead of, saying, yeah, we can do that in an hour, saying, well, why don't we cut half the shots we don't need, take 3 hours per setup, and then make sure that we can make that setup look as good as possible. And those are the conversations that you can have in pre-pro that you can't have on the day, because you're going to screw someone up if on the day of you show up and you say, oh, well, some of these shots are extraneous. We're just going to cut them and take 3 hours extra, because the location might not have that, or actors might not be able to stay there for 3 hours. They might have to go do something else, So pre-pro frees you up to be more demanding about your vision as a DP. If you want to achieve, this specific shot, then you can tell the director, if they're, especially once you get to the point where you've worked with people enough where they trust you, if you say, hey, I think we can do it this different way, it's going to maybe take an hour extra, but I promise you're going to get like 5 times more content or footage from this one setup than we would if we ran around like crazy and got all this other stuff we don't need. Can we do that? And most of the time, people will tell you yes, unless they have a really good reason not to. But those are the kind of important things you can do in pre-pro that you can't really do at any other time.
Yeah. And I mean, it's almost like doing all that stuff is like kind of like studying, because you're familiarizing with the content, and you're also, using your experience of technical knowledge of like, I know if we do it this way, it's going to be difficult or easier. Yeah. But if you actually like study the material, I would assume the person that has like studied the material the most is going to have better ideas and decisions. And the stuff where like I feel like I've gotten to a point now where I'm doing all the stuff that you just said, and it's making productions way easier
Mm-hmm.
and also higher quality. But then
Yeah.
I run into some, whether it's like client work and it's me and a grip, or if it's just like me and straight up a client. And I've produced everything, and they've greenlit like all the production documents and stuff like that. And then we get on there, and uh, they want to kind of like go a different direction, and I'm trying to backpedal it where it's like, all
Yeah.
right, if we want to stay on schedule and get what we need, we got to do this. And then they
Yeah.
come out with like, oh, you're not able to improvise, and I'm like, I don't know how to answer that because obviously, I mean, I feel like I could improvise, but it kind of feels like it's out of the realm of the discussion,
Yeah.
or is that the wrong way to think about it?
No, I think that I don't know. That's so much of this is specific per project. I would say
Right.
it depends really what you're working on, because when I've had really good riff moments where it's just like, oh, that light over there is really good. Let's, this scene was initially supposed to be over here. Let's take it over here. Or, we initially planned on doing B-roll here, but we're going to go do it over here. Stuff like that can work out. It's not, it's not a formula. I don't think you should ever lock yourself into like, oh, well, we said we were going to do it this way, and I'm just going to hard-headedly head in this direction because that was what we had on the schedule. But I also think that, I've seen, as working on a lower level position as maybe just a grip with a bigger crew, I have seen the pitfalls of director, DP producers getting really happy over something that they didn't need, and it totally really stabbing themselves in the back or stabbing their other teammates in the back, because somebody will say, oh, well, this location didn't look as good as I thought it did. Scout looked better. Let's go do it somewhere over here. Or, something that totally overhauls the schedule. And then you end up with like the worst set of repercussions because you had to drive 30 minutes in the opposite direction to do this one scene that probably wasn't that important. And then now you have to start paying people overtime, or you have to cut people out because you don't have the budget to pay everybody's overtime, or you ran out of light. And if you ran out of light and you want to do something at blue hour, it means you have to either push your schedule the next day back or figure something out to get that scene. So I think it can go both ways. I think it is like a very calculated, smart decision by a team that can do it not in a rush fashion. I think whenever I've seen people try to rush to get something done, it very rarely works out because unless you're considering the other variables that might go wrong, it might end up costing you more than you think. And, it's almost like the whole like perfection is the enemy of completion debate, which is like, if you try to just make everything look perfect, it's probably not going to work out for you. And that was something that I learned as I kind of delved more into the narrative thing, is you probably aren't going to make every shot look incredible, especially when you're working on narrative where there's long conversations. You might have to settle for some, thing that isn't as incredible as you wanted it to be, when you consider that it's like a 20-minute short and this one scene might only be 2 minutes of that. And it's like, well, it's like the conversation, it's like what we just talked about. It's like, oh, well, we have to shoot a blue hour scene in an hour, and I thought I was going to have 2 hours to do this scene, and so I can't unload stuff from the truck, and we're going to have to go pretty light so I can send the rest of the people that I have to go set something else up. So I'm going to compromise on this because I know I can deliver on something else. And sometimes you have to do that, It's impossible to watch any movie that you've ever seen that you love, that not every scene and every shot looks incredibly perfect. And there, behind every bad shot, there's a DP that was frustrated by the fact that he or she couldn't make it look the way that they wanted it to look. And that's, I think I'm definitely riffing off of somebody much smarter than me said, but I heard that someone on some podcast said that, and I was like, man, that is just the compromise of life.
Well, so to kind of shift a little bit, pre-pro and art department kind of go hand in hand, but
Yes.
art department and the look, which I guess is what like our job is all about, is the look. Is we said if your lighting is amazing, then it doesn't matter what camera you use. But also, if you have phenomenal lighting in an empty room, like what is it a good looking shot?
Yeah.
It's an empty
No.
room. So like art department and set dressing and all that stuff is really big key. Do you have any? Have you had to be a part of those kinds of discussions when it comes to
Yes.
producing and stuff?
Yes. Um, I know that the first time I really started caring about art department was like I was doing a master class, and they said the important triangle in a narrative piece is the art director, the DP, and the director. Those are the three most important people that are going to define the look of the film.
I like that.
And I, from that moment on, that was like a light bulb. I was like, man, this art department thing, that really, really matters a lot. And I was doing another master class on interviews, and they were talking about the DP should be one of the people that's helping pick outfits for interviews and picking things that are going to contrast well with your lighting and your background and your setup and your lens and your depth of field. And again, I was like, whoa, that's, I've never gone into an interview setup and said, well, can I get 3 outfits and I'm going to pick one? Because, you might have a blue background that looks gorgeous with a yellow, but it's going to look awful if you put a black on there or if you put a blue on there. So it was kind of all at the same time. I was like, well, art department matters a lot. And I still have not had the pleasure of working with a true full art department, but I've worked with a lot of producers and directors that understand how important it is. And we're kind of like putting all of us in a position to do art department, which I've really enjoyed. And I've also worked with incredibly talented directors that will do a small short and will art direct themselves, and they will bring in props and do everything, and because that's how much they want their vision to be articulated. And it matters a lot. I mean, it matters a lot what shirt your talent is wearing or what color their blouse is. All that matters. And it's also, when you start thinking about narrative stuff, you always want to serve the story. So if you have an empty room and it's supposed to be a loving family home, that's probably not going to work out. And if it's all supposed to be a broken home, you should probably clear that room out and make it look a little emptier. Those are the little things that are going to help the viewer be in touch with your story. And through that is going to make your cinematography look a lot better because it's going to feel like it fits with the story. And arguably is also one of the easiest things you can do to bump up your production value, is just building in a pre-light day where you can get in and set up a couple lights and then also clear out the room or fill in the room or do whatever you have to do, and is not largely impossible to do on most sets, and it adds a ton.
Are there any like kind of tricks or something you've noticed, like what I've been doing a lot lately with like art department is I usually try to have money set aside in the budget for like the things that are going to be particular, like if we're doing a like a 70s style Italian thriller film or something like that, we know like there's a couple motifs we got to hit that none of us have. So
Yeah.
I've got to go buy those or rent
Go
those.
buy a white tuxedo, a box of cannolis.
Yeah, more Roscoe gels.
Oh, absolutely.
But so like, those are some processes, and even sometimes like if we write in a particular spot where it's like for some reason the chair is kind of like that rifle hanging above the fireplace, where it's like that chair is important to the story. We got to go and find that.
Yeah.
Right. Have you been in any of those instances where you've had to like go out and help find those things and like acquire them, whether that was like renting or buying or having someone donate it for the time?
Yes and no. Luckily, every time I have been in a position. I've never really been the person to have to go find stuff, but I have been the person that weighs in on, yeah, that's the right chair. No, that's not the right chair. We need a fish that's going to be hanging above the fireplace because this guy's a maniac. Stuff like that. But I've never had to go out and look for stuff per se. I really like lamps. I think most DPs love lamps. So I would say I have an adequate lamp collection of my own that I will often bring to set on, like, if it's a short and there's a lot of living room stuff, I'm probably going to bring like 3 or 4 lamps of my own that I know are going to look good in the background. That is something I bring pretty often. And like I'm always available to bring own things of mine that, we need an end table or something like that. But a lot of the times maybe I've just been really lucky, but I've gotten a lot of directors that will go out with talent and, they'll say, well, what's the color palette? What are you thinking for outfits? I'll throw out a couple colors. I'll throw out a couple, blouse, skirt, button-up shirt, stuff like that. Oh, I think that's going to work. And then they'll just send me options and say, well, these are, me and talent narrowed it down to these 3. We think this is going to fit well. What are you thinking for, what's going to look good on camera? So yeah, I mean, maybe I think I'm just really lucky I've gotten to work with good directors.
Well, it's so crazy that you mentioned this because I've been planning to do this for a while. I just had my, when COVID happened, I had to get rid of my storage unit because it was just an unnecessary expense. And storage downtown is, for some reason, like 3 times the price of anywhere else. But I was just starting a lamp collection.
Yeah.
I had these like clients who were older ladies, and they were like, "Oh, I have a ton of lamps in my attic. You can come by and pick them up." I'm like, "This is like
Taking
Christmas,
payment
dude."
in lamps. It was like
I mean,
day rate is 32 different lamps, please.
It'd be close, but I don't know. Like floor lamps, I feel like are so versatile, but yeah. Like I feel bad because some of my clients like will rent an Airbnb because they need like I did a couple like commercial things where we would just rent like a cool house for a lifestyle brand or something like that, and it would just be like
open
talking
kitchen
heads
and stuff like that. Yeah.
And like the first thing I do when I get in there is I take inventory of all the lamps, and then I start trading them off in different rooms and like writing down on sticky notes like this lamp came from this room, so put it back when we leave.
Yeah.
And they're like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "This is everything." Like the lamp, because I mean. It does feel that my work has become very formulaic, and I'm trying to get out of that. But it's pretty much like one tube light, or like a diffused key and a practical. Like,
Yeah.
if you look at the past like 12 Instagram posts, it's a key and a practical, man. And
Key and a practical.
the lamps
That's
are
your
always the
1-2.
practicals.
Yeah. I think all DPs have their 1-2 punch. Like it was kind of funny. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were like, "Yeah, I'm just, I'm trying to build up my lighting setup. What's your go-to fill light?" And I was like, "I don't use fill lights. Maybe I should." But I was like, maybe I should, but I don't own a light where I'm like, "Yeah, it's my fill light." I am a big bounce guy. Like, I think that's natural. I think you key and then you kind of work with a bounce to give you whatever you think is natural that would be giving you back from your baseboard or your wall or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. I have had that conversation multiple times, and it's made me really question if I should start fill lighting. But I think for me personally, I have like a bad association with fill lighting because I attribute it to like bad mid 2000s, like crappy work. Like I hate when you can just see the fill light and you're like, yeah, there's no way that's there. But
Are you talking about like 5D generation filmmaking?
Yeah, maybe that. Yeah, just like whenever you can see just like the nasty 5600 that isn't even matching the key, and it's like a really grotesque fill, it always makes me kind of cringe. But I want, like, now that I've had that conversation, I want to start using a fill light when it is right, just to like test myself. to like to like know, can I use a fill light? But yeah, I don't know. I think all DPs have that like little 1-2, like whatever their go-to is that they know they can make look good.
Yeah, I just feel like I'm getting way too used to it, because it's just like all my stuff starting to look the same. Do you know? Is it Ben Davies or Ben Davis? He's on Cook
Ben
Optics YouTube channel a lot.
Ben, I
I
don't
want
know
to
who
say
that
it's
is.
Davis, but he did. I want to pull it up real quick, but he did Avengers, and he did a ton else. 3 billboards outside of
Yeah.
Missouri. He did,
Okay,
and then
I think I
apparently he's
know.
been doing a ton of Marvel stuff.
I think I binge watch Cook TV so much that like I only recognize people if I see their faces, because
Yeah,
like I'll go on like a 35 video binge where it's just like people talking and me taking notes in my notebook, and then I'm terrible with names too. I'm that person on
he
set. Go for it.
he did Layer Cake. That's why it came to mind.
Ah, okay, that's a great movie. Um, I'm that person on set where I'll like shake your hand and introduce myself, and then as soon as I let go of your hand, I realize I didn't hear you say your name.
Yeah,
And I'm like so bad at doing that, and then I feel terrible when I have to like ask someone like, "Oh, who's that? Who's that person?" But yeah, I'm not terrible with names.
don't feel alone. I'm the same way. Like my dad taught me, like, when someone tells you their name, just say it back and it'll stick. So like I'm
Oh,
trying to. That
that's a
it
good
really
one.
helps.
That's a
But like
good one. I might have to
you
steal
gotta
that.
remember to do it.
You
So
have to remember to do it. I think
yeah,
it gets hard too when you're kind of on a binger of a lot of work, and it's like your fifth or sixth day and you only know two people on set. Like you only know the director and the producer, and then you like don't know any of the grips or like no PAs or anything. Or when you're gripping and you're working with a crew that is like out of town, so you like don't know anybody other than like maybe the one other grip they hired locally, and it makes it so hard when you've done like 5 or 6 of those back to back. Pre-COVID
yeah,
days, of course, because no work now, but yeah, and then you get so bad about it where you're just like, man, I'm not listening to any of these people's names. I need to like listen to names.
it might be on the call sheet.
I always do the walkie checkout. Like I always
Oh
go check out the walkie checkout, and then just because I feel if it's like, man, it starts with an M. It starts with an M. Michelle, that was her name, and then it'll like kind of jog your memory. You're like, Jeff, I knew it was Jeff. So yeah, you don't look like a fool until you call them the wrong name.
yeah.
Yeah. There's like a Michelle and a Morgan, and you totally mix them up, or like a Jeff and like a David.
But yeah, Cook Optics, man, like that was
That YouTube channel is revolutionary.
I can't remember how I stumbled across it, but I've been watching them for a couple years, and I like how they just don't have like these like pioneer type um, DPs and gaffers on there. It's almost like it's all like, I don't want to say old heads, but it's like
There's a lot
seasoned
of old people up
dudes,
there.
and like a lot of the times you know their movies, but you don't know them.
Yeah. I think it
Um,
depends what kind of cinema you are drawn to, which I know you and me both are oldies. And I think it also depends your level of respect for prior cinema, which I think is impossible to neglect if you're serious about your career. But if you're one of those people who's like, oh, I don't watch anything in black and white, I don't watch anything old, I just, I watch YouTube videos made by vloggers to improve my lighting, you are not going to enjoy Cook TV. But if you're someone who really cares about, like, if you're reading old film books and watching anything pre 1950, Cook Optics is going to, like, be your shit, honestly. Like,
yeah,
you're going to go on those binge rants. Definitely. You're just going to start watching all this and you're like, this is the good things do not stop.
yeah. Well, it's just weird. Like, I guess I brought up Ben Davis. I don't know why I think it's Davis.
Ben D.
Um, Davis. He did like the Avengers stuff, and I
Mm-hmm.
noticed recently, like, I'm accidentally looking like him. Like I don't even watch his stuff and go like I want to do that. Like
Yeah.
I'm just accidentally doing it, and I realized maybe that's why the Marvel movies look way too unrealistic, and that like I'm making my stuff look unrealistic because everybody has like a hair light.
Perfect hair
Everybody,
light. Yeah.
you go to a reverse and there's like an outline everywhere.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know. It looks cool. Like I don't know.
There's a place for it all, you know. You need the grunge and you need the clean. I remember I was on set with a DP who I really look up to, and he was kind of going through this big transition from being a commercial DP to wanting to do more narrative work. And I flew out for the job. I was the only person that was like not in the crew, and I was just ACing. And because I was flying in, it was me, the director, and a DP all in an Airbnb for like 5 days. So these guys are like way above me in terms of like what they're working on. And it was like the most revelatory 5 days of just getting to pick their brains all the time. And I was definitely in a big filtration stage, which I would say I still enjoy filtering. But I remember this DP just saying, nobody really uses dirty lenses in Hollywood because it doesn't always serve the story. And I was like, man, that makes so much sense. And he was like, if you watch any of your favorite Hollywood films, I guarantee you they're shot on the most pristine, most clean glass ever. And they're still making something creative. So don't use that fallback of just like, oh, I'm going to do a half BPM on there because it's going to like make it look more interesting, because that might not always be the answer. But then, you know, there's always a place for it. Like I always think, looking back on Arrival, which is one of my favorite movies, and Be Young, in the end there, when he does that, like he did a talk about it, maybe on Cook Optics, where he talks about he was shooting like 1.2, 1.4, and he's doing these incredibly like painterly, just like gorgeous low depth of field. It's still the cleanest glass on planet Earth, but it looks incredible, and it fits exactly to what you need to think about in that last little bit. But, you know, it's about finding other ways to do that, not always going on like the easy way. And I honestly do not remember how I got on this tangent, but it's something I think about a lot. Is like, you want to, you know, make things happen with not always following the trend. And that's something that kind of trickles down a lot from Hollywood, I think.
Yeah. You were saying there's time for grunge and time for clean.
Oh yeah.
Well, and I think you made multiple points there. Is like the young crowd. Like there's even a world that I haven't even gotten into yet, and sometimes I think like maybe I don't know about stuff, but it's like no, you know what it is. You just aren't for it, and just because you're ignorant of the industry, I'm talking about Black Pro Mist and all those filters and stuff.
Yeah.
Never used them. But I see this stuff and I'm like, okay, like I get what they do. It's like not for me, and I don't know about the products. That doesn't make me ignorant. It's just like if you know, Sony cameras aren't my thing, I don't need to know the product line, you know?
Yeah, and I think that, you know, it's a big pond, you know. We don't always have to all be into the same stuff. I used to try to reconcile with like, you know, you start networking, and when you're more in the middle ground, you're trying to network with these people that are doing big projects who you really look up to, that are doing feature films. And if that's the direction you want to go into, you know, me, I really, at this point in my career, 2020, I think I want to do narrative feature films and short films. That is my current trajectory. In 2 years and 6 months, that might all change. But that's where I'm headed, and that's what I find really interesting. That's why I like Cook Optics. That's why I can't remember watching a movie that was made in the last 50 years because I'm just crushing all these old films. But that is directly correlated to where I want to go in my career. I would be a absolutely terrible vlogger, but if I wanted to be a kick-ass vlogger, I should probably go learn more about vlogging and doing quick edits and doing transitions and using zoom lenses with autofocus. I know nothing about that, but that's okay because I don't need to know anything about that. Just like if I was a vlogger, I wouldn't have to know anything about all the crap that I know now about light setups and pre-production and all that stuff. So I used to kind of try to, you know, I wanted to like network to everybody and be like everybody's friend. And then I just kind of realized that like sometimes you're going to network with someone. And somebody asked me this the other day. Somebody that is going to App and they're graduating, and a professor reached out to me about talking to them. And then he asked me what my best tip for networking was. And I said that you're not going to get along with everybody, because it is absolutely impossible to think that you're going to network with, if you're doing a good job networking, 200 plus people a year that you're going to meet and network with. And you're not going to get along with everybody. And I think a main part of that too is if you're networking with other directors and DPs, they're probably not always into the same stuff. You might meet somebody who really wants to do commercials. Like their whole goal is to do like high key commercial work. So like they probably don't, really do a lot of mood work because they like doing like high key fashion commercial work. That doesn't make their work bad. It makes it awesome at what they're doing. But it's impossible to kind of cater to everybody. And I think it's okay to say, hey, this is where I'm at now. This is what I enjoy doing. This is what I think I want to do. And that's okay. And then you might network with somebody who doesn't want to do that, but you become friends with them. And then in 10 years, they want to do the same thing you're doing. And then that's a good connection. So I think it's okay to like realize that there's a big pond in filmmaking, and there's like a lot of little cubbies for everybody that wants to do their thing.
That's a really good way to put it. And I can definitely relate with the whole networking thing, because sometimes you like meet people and it's like, oh, I'd like to work with them, or I want to talk more with them, and it's like you don't fit a gap for them, and it's like why, like at that point, if you want to be friends, cool, but networking isn't necessarily for friendship. It's usually business progression. But yeah, I definitely hear you on that one.
Yeah, my best networking has been friends like not networking. Like I've been networking a lot during this time. It's a lot of Zoom meetings, and the length of the Zoom meeting is dependent entirely on how well it went, I think, in a lot of ways. Because a lot of the networking that I've done that's gone incredibly well ends up like not even being networking. Like you end up talking about like hobbies and interests and what movie you watched, and you're like 3 hours in and you're like, whoa, I gotta go like eat dinner, but this conversation is so good. I think that's like what all networking should be, unless you are, you want to do a 45-minute chat with somebody who's going to hire you on their next project. And there's definitely, that happens. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. We all do that. We all, you all got to make money and work on cool projects. But I think that those, especially, as DPs, when you're trying to network with a director, so crucial to have that kind of basement almost to the house be built on things that have nothing to do with work. Just like having the same morals, thinking the same things. Or you end up with like bad directors who like don't want to feed their crew. And then you're like, how did I end up on this shoot? Like, this isn't fun for anybody.
So you've been networking through Zoom lately? I
Yeah,
think I've
dude.
been seeing people do that, and I just like I haven't tried it. Like I'm not. I just talked to somebody recently, and I was like, I do kind of miss in-person networking.
Yeah,
even though last year I hated it. It's almost
everybody
like when you
does.
don't have it,
When
you don't.
Everybody does when they first get into it.
Yeah.
Especially if you're like awkward and shy, which I am. I would say both.
Yeah.
It's definitely hard to reach out to people.
I feel like when I networked, or just in any kind of social interaction, if I'm me, Ethan, as a person, I'm going to be shy. I'm not gonna enjoy it. It's gonna take like way too much courage to like speak up or like break ice with somebody. But when I'm the owner of the Animist, it's so much easier. Like it doesn't even.
Yeah.
It's like an alter ego or something like that. That's a terrible way to put it, but that's kind of close.
Dude, you're like a superhero. Yeah, no, I mean, it's work is a great way to get in to networking. Like if you're coming at it as like, hey, I'm a DP and you're a director, we should know each other. Makes it a little easier than you just like kind of reaching out and you're like, hey, I'm this guy and I really like to meet you.
Yeah.
But yeah, Zoom networking, it's the same thing as normal networking, I would say. It's a lot of just like reaching out to people and seeing if they're available. But the thing about it is like a lot of people are super available. So like it's a lot easier to slide into those DMs, especially when you're trying to work with bigger DPs that are traveling a lot. Now they're not traveling. So like they might have that, half an hour that you might need to chat them up. I would definitely say it's easier if you go like the friends of friends route, or like someone that they know, or you followed them for a while. I would not recommend like following the largest represented DP you follow and then 2 days later Zooming them and trying to get in touch with them. But, it's easy to kind of, the people that are on the barrier of your network where like who they are and they might even know who you are, it's really easy to like kind of bridge that and say, hey, we have a lot of mutual friends, would really love to chat. And getting that done now in this time is also like the best hack for feeling productive on a really hard day when you feel like you are not being productive whatsoever.
Are you familiar with Evan Borsier at all?
I am.
Have you ever watched any of his like the stuff? I don't know if it's leaked from Patreon, but it's like videos that were meant for his Patreon page, but he puts on YouTube publicly.
I would say no. I have seen like some of his older stuff, but I don't think I've seen any of his newer stuff.
Oh, okay. Because I think might have been like this time last year, I started to see stuff where he would go through like call sheet, like he would screen share and he would go through like call sheets and treatments and spreadsheets and like literally like the full shebang of like corporate production of like this is how you would schedule stuff, this is how you have your contact forms and all that stuff. And I was like, that kind of like was a great pre-production little seminar that I felt like kind of probably got seen by like a couple thousand people, but I don't know, it seemed like something super resourceful.
Yeah,
I didn't know if you had checked it out.
No, I've seen all that kind of stuff on Wandering DP. I'm a big fiend for Wandering DP. I think that site changed my life, but I think there's probably a lot of DPs that are just like obsessed with Wandering DP, and I'm one of them. But that it's invaluable to put yourself in a position to look at those resources, and I've kind of cultivated a little list of things to keep an eye out from directors and DPs I follow on social platforms as well as Wandering DP. I always love when, a DP is like, oh, these are, my top 5 books that helped launch my work. And I always immediately go buy those books. And I have like a big shelf of books, and like there's a reason why DPs and directors collect photo books, because they're the best for references and looking through. And just like if you aren't feeling super inspired, and just sitting down and like looking through a photo book can be incredibly refreshing. But yeah, I mean, just like podcasts, books, shows, YouTube channels that are going to be potentially very helpful for your career are always like welcome suggestions.
Well, are there any books that you've read recently that you helped a lot?
There's the ASC book, which is the 4 C's of cinematography. That one can be infinitely helpful. The Interaction of Color, the Joseph Albers book, also incredible. Painting with Light, which is by the DP John Alton. He was like a film noir DP. Super interesting career. Basically resigned his membership from the ASC, had like a very interesting career path, moved to South America, decided to come back and continue DPing, but it was just a legend. But he wrote this book, which has been like his long-standing contribution to cinema, which is called Painting with Light. And it's all like C-stands from like the 1950s. So none of the gear is really stuff that we still use, but all the techniques are still so applicable. And just like if you like watching old movies, it also is incredibly interesting to watch because it's like all the techniques that are being used in those films. Yeah, I think those 3 books are really good reading. I legitimately call it study time, and like I will move things in my schedule and tell people, oh, I can't because I'm studying. And if you know me, then you've heard that and it's not weird to you. If you don't know me and you hear that, you're like, that's so weird. Why is this dude like, what? He's not in school. But I think it's important to, especially if you're passionate about being a DP, you have to realize that like everyone, not everyone, but most people are going to be more talented than you. That's just like a fact of the matter. And there's also another DP told me this once, which is there's always someone above you and always someone below you. Someone is looking at your work and they think that you are the A1 day one. You're a legend. And you're looking up at someone saying the same thing. And I remember looking at some DPs and, you know, you hear someone like Bradford talk and he says, yeah, we didn't really do a lot of pre-pro. We just showed up. We're shooting, you know, 7203, whatever, 35 mil. And this is what we came up with. And like that's how he legitimately talks about shooting like multiple scenes in Arrival. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know if I could show up and do anything close to as good as that. But if you study and you learn and you do pre-pro, you can maybe get pretty close. And you know, you want to make up with, you know, somebody asked me that the other day and I said I make up with my lack of talent with just sheer knowledge. And I'm not saying I'm an untalented individual, but you can make up whatever it is that you don't have that the other guys and girls have in this industry with just like sheer knowledge. If you can just know more and have more experience to when you're put in a situation that's uncomfortable and you're running out of daylight and you don't know what to do, if you can call back on all that like lighting knowledge that you have and you can say, oh yeah, okay, I know how to do this. I'm going to mitigate this. And I'm going to get there, you know, faster and it's going to look just as good. You'll probably be a more successful DP than the person who's like flying by the seat of their pants, ad-libbing it all. When they get to that situation and they're like, oh, I don't know what to do, then that's not going to be good for them or going to be good for production when they have to say, well, we need an extra day, we need more money, we need all this stuff. So if you can educate yourself and, you know, watch a lot of movies or watch a lot of music videos or watch a lot of commercials, whatever it is whatever the content is that you want to make, and then you can learn through lighting, knowledge, through books, through whatever, to be able to do that, you will be an asset to your team and also be a much more successful DP, I think.
Well, I think those are wise words.
Wise words to end on.
Yeah. Appreciate you coming on, and go ahead and send me that demo reel, and I'll be sure and throw it on the video version.
Absolutely.
So thanks for listening. Be sure to check the notes for websites and Instagram handles to check out the guest. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at I am the Animist and YouTube at the Animist Official. Thanks.